The course of social welfare policy. Hello. It's a social welfare study channel, Social Welfare Insight. This time, we're going to learn about the process of social welfare policy. Social welfare policies include policy agenda formation, policy alternatives, and you go through the process of policy making, policy execution, and finally policy evaluation. The formation of social welfare policies is a process in which social welfare policies are created as an independent policy. And policy agenda and policy alternatives are formed. And you make policy decisions. The enforcement of social welfare policies is the process of actually implementing independently created social welfare policies. Evaluation of social welfare policies is the process of evaluating social welfare policies implemented according to a certain analysis framework. Before we look into the process, let's look at the issues and agendas. An issue is a political issue. The issue is that social welfare issues should be of public interest. It should be able to be presented as a point of welfare. Policy and social conflicts of interest should be addressed. In other words, there has to be a counter-argument to the point of solving the problem. Although repression is a social issue that attracts the public's attention, it refers to an issue that is controlled by policy-related parties and cannot be presented as a public policy issue, but is ignored. And most of the issues belong to this. A latent issue is when an issue that once occurred as an event subsides over time. Most of the social problems belong to this. If you are a social worker who expects to change society through important issues, you can act as an issue maker. As an issue maker, there are clients, social workers, media, politicians, and so on. A social worker is an expert in contacting clients and knows their problems and the need for social solutions. The role is very important because the will to solve problems is also strong. As an agent, social workers can directly make social issues an issue on behalf of the client. As a mobilizer, the media and politicians can be mobilized to make social issues an issue. As a pressure person, you can pressure the government to allocate resources to solving social problems. As a coordinator, you can coordinate the relationship between the public, including the client, and the government. Agenda refers to a list of issues adopted as policy targets among issues, and means that they have become the subject of public discussion. There's a public agenda and a government agenda on the agenda. A public agenda refers to an agenda that has gained social attention while attracting the public's attention. The government agenda is the government's official decision-making process. I'm talking about the agenda. The social welfare agenda is set by the government. That the social welfare problem is problem subject to social welfare policy. In other words, it refers to the process or action of being converted and adopted into a social welfare agenda. Social welfare agenda is one of the controversial issues related to social welfare. It refers to a problem that has become a policy target. Just because there's a social controversy doesn't mean every issue is on the agenda. Now, let's look at policy alternatives. The formation process of policy alternatives is identify policy issues and situations surrounding them, set policy objectives, and it explores and develops policy alternatives that can achieve that goal. To compare and analyze which policy alternatives are most desirable. It's a process. This is the process of finding a solution to the problem and for policymakers. In the process of providing information, develop and compare the most effective policy alternatives to solve the problem. It's a review process, so it's relatively. He has a non-political personality, and he has a rational and technical personality. Setting policy objectives. Policy objectives are desirable future objectives that are intended to be achieved through policy, and that's why the policy exists. The goal of social welfare policy, vaguely expressed at the abstract level, is it must be materialized. The higher goals are linked to the lower goals, and the lower goals are as quantitatively as possible. We need to define it to be measurable. Exploration and development of alternatives. When a policy goal is set as a policy tool, we need to come up with solutions. Collecting and comprehensively reviewing alternative information in the problems, situations, and future. I need to analyze it. If you have prior information, review the relevant past policies to make it easier to make alternatives. You can extract it. How to develop a policy alternative is: first, there's a way to look at past or existing policies related to social issues. The advantage of this method is that it can predict various outcomes to some extent in advance. And the disadvantages are politics, economy, and it's easy to go through trial and error because of changes in social situations. You can also refer to foreign policy cases. However, political, economic, social, and cultural differences sometimes fail to produce the expected results. There is also a way to infer alternatives from social science. Knowledge or theories such as social welfare, sociology, and political science. There's also an intuitive way to create it under subjective judgment. Comparative analysis of alternatives. The preliminary analysis was conducted before the full-scale analysis, and among the numerous policy alternatives. It's about selecting only a few alternatives that will be analyzed in earnest. Predicting the outcome of a policy alternative is. It is to anticipate the consequences of the implementation of the alternative. In advance of the implementation, I can help social welfare policymakers who lack ability and time. The criteria used in the process of deducing alternatives are feasibility and desirability. Realizability refers to technical feasibility and political feasibility. Technological feasibility refers to the professional level of policy enforcement agencies, whether policy alternatives will be implemented satisfactorily, compared to financial and administrative capabilities, on the basis of whether political feasibility is politically acceptable. That is to say, can we overcome issues like veto power, parliamentary passage, and people's opposition? Desirability refers to efficiency, effectiveness, and equity. Efficiency refers to the ratio of input to output, and the aspect of resource conservation is emphasized. If you get a lot of output at the lowest possible cost, you can say efficiency is good. It's similar to what we easily call cost effectiveness. Effectiveness is the standard of effectiveness in the degree of achievement of a policy's goals, regardless of the cost, how much the policy has achieved the goals it seeks. That's what I do. The degree of inequality among social classes. As a result of the implementation of the policy of equity, it's about whether it can be corrected. Let's take a look at the characteristics of policymaking. Not everyone can make policy decisions, but they can make policy decisions. Only authorized people can do it. A policy determined by an authoritative policymaker has authority. Among the proposed policy alternatives, in the interests of various forces in society, the policymaker selects the final solution alternative. The policy should be based on the overall public interest, so it has the public interest, because it is the product of compromise between social forces, relationships with other policies, and you have to take into account changes in social situations. In other words, policy requires a macro perspective, with public interest from the perspective of society as a whole. Policy enforcement is the process of realizing policy decisions. In other words, they want to put the already decided policy into practice and achieve the effect of the policy. It's an intended activity, implemented to achieve the goals of officially expressed social welfare policies. It's a series of dynamic cycles. Let's take a look at the significance and purpose of social welfare policy evaluation. The social welfare policy evaluation refers to the goals and target groups to be achieved by the policy. It is a systematic, objective, and empirical review of the effect. Provide information for the improvement of policies subject to evaluation and prepare persuasive data on related interest groups and by presenting basic data for the development of new policy alternatives, with the goal of contributing to the development of the theory. As for the evaluation type, after the end of the program, there is a general evaluation result evaluation, which is an evaluation of overall results. There is a formative evaluation process evaluation, that evaluates the implementation process of policies. The two types of evaluations can be interconnected. The evaluation of the results after the implementation of the policy, and the evaluation conducted before the evaluation. Policy effects by linking ex post evaluation of policy execution process. Or you can trace the background or cause of the ineffectiveness. The results of policy enforcement are put back into the policy environment. The policy process may restart. This time, we're going to learn about the social welfare policy process. I had some time, since it's time to learn about the process, compared to other times. I think it's been a harder time. In the next session, we're going to look at the analysis of policy. Thanks for watching. Have a healthy day today.